So there was a lot of stuff that had happened over the last 2 months that I want to make sure I highlight. And I don't know what it is about Teams, but Teams seems to be getting the brunt of a lot of the different changes that are happening. So you're going to see a plethora of Teams updates. So let's get started on that. Before we get the Teams, there are a couple of things I want to highlight. So one thing that OneDrive is getting in this update coming out here, starting already and going into late November, is the ability to add what's called a shortcut, right? So it's basically a .uri file that's going to go in here pointing to someplace else, and you're going to put it in this the My Files area or other locators, or other locations, I should say. All it does is creates this file. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this .url file, it will not automatically update if anything changes with that particular file, right? So if you move it, delete it, whatever, that file is static. But keep that in mind as you're going through this. But this is something that you do want to let your users know about this change that's happening. The other thing I was pretty interested in this one was an Outlook one that's happening. And this is something that is coming here mid-November to late November, the ability to preserve declined meetings, right? So I don't know how many times you guys have declined a meeting. You're like, oh, I got to go back into my deleted items to go find something, right? So what you can do is a setting inside Outlook. And specifically, it is for Outlook on web and new Outlook for Windows, not classic, right? So if you haven't flipped the switch, you're not going to see this. But it does allow you to be able to see the placeholder for it. It will not show up as something that like you're that you're going to be going to it. It's just going to show up on your calendar so you can see that. And if you need to change it, then you have it access right there. Admins, just so you know, you can disable this feature across your tenant utilizing PowerShell. The Message Center post has the information specific to that PowerShell command to be able to do that. All right, another Exchange Online one, and if you haven't seen this or you haven't heard about this one, this is a big one because I use Find Time all the time, and you're going to be like, well, where did it go? Well, it's being renamed to Scheduling Poll. However, what I've seen when I've been using this, because internal on Microsoft here, we have access to early pieces, you'll see the word Find Time in there somewhere, right? So it's not going to be 100% flipped over, but it is going to be this thing called Scheduling Poll. The other piece to this is that they're removing the add-in and making this a native feature within the Outlook app. Right, so it's not going to be something you have to manage that ad anymore if that's the case. It is a feature that will be just built right into Outlook. So as you notice, it says Outlook for Windows, web, and Mac also will be available for Classic Outlook, depending upon what channel you are in. Check that out as well. But you know what happens with these kind of things? Let your users know that this little change is going to happen. They're going to be like, where's my Find Time? And you're going to be like, even in this screenshot, you can see it even shows the word Find Time down below. And this was directly from the Message Center post. So just so you know, it's not going to be 100%. You're going to see Find Time in there, but Scheduling Poll is going to be the biggest thing. All right. Teams Admin Center is getting a little bit of a change, especially when it comes to app management. You will be able to have, starting here late November, going through February of 2024, you would have, as admins, the ability to be able to control who can install Teams apps, even more control. So you can literally assign a particular app to users, to groups of people, or to a whole organization if that's the case. And then who can then install those if they want to do that. But it's a phased approach that they're taking with this. The first phase, which is happening here right away, is you have just the global app policy configured, no custom policy, right? So if you go into your Teams app policies and you're just using the global app policy, that's going to migrate as is with those settings that you have in there. Okay. Number two, if you're utilizing global and custom, right? So you have custom for specific groups, different scenarios, right? And you have the global for everybody else, right? Those, you can choose the policy that you want to move over and to be that new app-centric model. So you can choose that custom policy will get this. And then you can assign who's been assigned to that, or you can adjust who's assigned to that. Phase 3 applies to those skipped other phases, right? And they did not give me any more details. They literally just said details coming, right? So we don't know what that really means if either one of those two scenarios happened. This is something that you do want to make sure you dive into a little bit more, experience it, and then let your users know what's going on. All right, another thing, and this one, actually, by the time we came to this one, it already had an update to it as far as timing when things changed. But in a Teams channel, you have this ability to make an announcement, right? In that announcement, you are going to get the ability to be able to utilize Microsoft Designer and, more specifically, generative AI. Okay, so in that particular, when you're in there, you're going to get a little customized button. This little button is going to allow you to be able to use Microsoft Designer. But before you get to that, right, you're going to be able to say, what do you want the banner to be, right? And that's where that generative AI is, and specifically DALL-E is going to be part of this process. So it's going to give you the, whatever you throw in there is going to give you some options. And if you click on something, you have the ability to customize it. That will take you into Microsoft Designer to tweak it, right? So maybe I want to change the picture. Maybe I want to change the color. Maybe I want to change the wording. I can do all of that within Microsoft Designer, but that DALL-E piece is going to happen just prior to that as it's coming up with these particular parts. I do want to point this out. This is a Teams, specifically the DALL-E part is a Teams premium feature, right? So keep that one in mind, but it is something that is important that you know about as it is changing, especially as we're moving to this channel 2.0 version, and it is only for English speaking in US specifically at this point. Notify your users on that. Okay. I see Heather is adding or asking a question, what happens to Find Time and Classic Outlook? I think that's also getting updated based off of what channel you're getting your Office 365 updates on, right? And so if I go back, give me a second, where was that one? Oh, here we go. In the current channel or monthly enterprise channel and semi-annual enterprise previews, you will get that. So depending on when those get updated, that's when you're going to get those, Heather. All right. Moving forward. Another thing you want to mark down on your calendars as far as something that's going to be happening and changing that could throw your end users off is mid-November to late November is targeted release, but for everybody else, it's late November to mid-December. The Files app is going to be no more, and it's going to be updated to the OneDrive app. And you literally are going to get the same thing as your experiences. If you go into OneDrive for web, you're going to get that experience inside Teams, right? So you click on that OneDrive icon, and you're going to see OneDrive web basically sitting there for you to see. The one thing I do want you to know is this: it's only for new web and not effective for, or will not affect the Classic or Teams mobile clients at all. So it's those that are doing the new version of Teams, right? So if you notice up in the left-hand corner, they toggled the new Teams button and you're in that experience, that's where you're going to see that particular app. It's the OneDrive app that has. Yeah, file. Yeah, I mean, it actually says, I think it was just file is what it said, Teresa. But then when you go into files, it showed you those specifically to Teams, things you worked on, some recent things. This is replacing that whole experience, right? Okay, continuing on the Teams side of things, there was an update that's coming up here late November and early December, new settings for frontline managers and shifts. So if you guys are utilizing Shifts, which is an app inside Teams that allows you to be able to help manage and schedule shifts within your organization, you are getting a little bit more ability for those managers to be able to approve. So it's more on the approval side of things within the shifts themselves, right? So approval, employees can then swap something, but then the manager or the frontline manager needs to approve, like swap of shifts requests, offer shifts requests, or even time off requests. Make sure you document this, especially if you are owning the Shift app within your organization on some of these changes that are happening here late November to early December. All right, one that I've had this request from a lot of my customers, specifically when it comes to Teams events, right? So Teams meetings or events type of thing. Being able to generate, and I know there's other capability or other programs or applications that can do this, but generate a unique join link for your external presenters, right? So they get that unique join link. It's just for them. They click on it, they go in. Okay. So this is only organizers can do this. So they set that up and they put in, as they're setting up this event, the ability or that name, right? And this is, by the way, for webinars only. I want to caveat that first before I move on. Webinars only, and the whole external presenter side of things, right? So notice what this part here, it says external presenters include outside of the organization, which are guests, right, that don't have an account inside your organization, federated or even unfederated, and anonymous, right? So it covers those people that are outside of your organization and getting that unique link to be able to join your event. Again, webinars only, but make sure that you notify your organizers of these types of that are using webinars that this is a feature that's happening. Right, some updates that are happening to the Teams desktop application. This is a new, basically it's a revamp of the gallery, the main gallery that most of us use when we're in a Teams meeting, right? Notice the different rollouts that are happening between targeted, standard, GCCH, and DoD. Some things that are changing with this, which you're going to notice that's different, especially with that screenshot you see there, is the 16 by 9 aspect ratio that you see in there. That's carrying over across all of the different representations in here. Those who have video that's enabled and those who are just audio only. You'll notice it's pretty consistent across the board. And if, for instance, you had somebody that was in that meeting from a conference room, what you'll see is that actually will be larger than the other boxes, right? So that way you can see more as far as what's in that conference room and be able to interact with them a little bit more. One of the additionally, you're going to be able to customize that, right? So if you say, maybe I don't want the conference room to be bigger than all of it, I can actually bring that down. You can prioritize what has what priority, videos versus audio, right? So you can see the videos versus those who are just audio only. And then placement of your own tile. Oh, that's the other thing too, is your tile is going to be included in there too, right? So in the past, that was not the case. Now you're going to be a part of that meeting. You'll see yourself in there as well. And you can decide, nah, I don't want to have my video in there. I can remove that out. Big change again, happening early December to mid-December for targeted and standard and GCC January-ish timeframe. Make sure you're ready for that. That's a big change that your end users are going to notice. On the Teams phone side of things, this thing called Private Line was introduced and will be coming out here in December, and then GCC and DoD in January and February. Think of this as being able to have a secondary private line, right? So you may have an executive that you want to be able to have them have a hotline directly to them, so it bypasses all delegates, any admins or assistants that may be set up on the other lines, and it's directly to that particular person. So that way, it only supports incoming calls. You won't be using that as an outbound type scenario, but only incoming. Understand that you can set up a unique ringtone for this. You can set up it will have a unique notification saying that this person's coming in on that particular private line. It even shows here in this screenshot on your private line, okay? It is not a Teams premium feature, Jennifer. So thank God for that, right? All right. Another thing on Teams rooms, some enhancements for those who have Teams rooms on Windows specifically. This is the active video speaker promotion. And this is something that I think we're going to talk more about this week at Ignite. but it was a message center post. So basically what happens is this: if you are not presenting content, which normally shows up here when I'm in front row types layout, okay? When you have that set up, and with this update, what's going to end up happening is then anybody who is the primary speaker, right, that's going to be talking is going to be prioritized to that position, okay? That way it's not just blank because we're not showing any content at that point. If there is a dual display or a single display, it's going to be similar to this. If it's dual display, the most recent active video are promoted to center on each screen if that's the case. When sharing content, obviously that's going to replace that person in one of those. But there is some changes in how it's going to prioritize who is speaking versus not. Keep that in mind. It is something that you probably want people to understand what's going on when that change happens, mid-November to late December. Another huge ask for Teams rooms was wrapped around Teams live event. And I know what you're thinking, but is Teams live event going away? Well, yes. And that was another session we talked about that. It will be going away in September of 2024, right? However, this was a huge ask that attendees are able to attend a Teams live event in a MTR conference room type scenario or a Teams room conference room scenario. So here in mid-November to late December, with the Teams rooms on Windows app 4.19 update, that is happening. Now, I will tell you, though, it is not an automatic thing. You, as the organizer, are going to have to do something. Specifically, as you kind of see in these screenshots, you're going to have to delete some stuff, right? So you're going to have to delete out, this is a meeting and the conference room. You have to add the conference room into as a required attendee. And then you take the join link and you post it or paste it into the location. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow that Teams room to be able to see that and say, oh, I can then join this meeting room or join this Teams live event, okay? So there is some direction on how to do it. However, it is still a big deal because I know a lot of my customers were wanting this to happen and it wasn't going to happen until now. So I'm happy that we finally get to this point. We're going to be using that for now. Understand too is eventually with Town Hall, this is going to be something that's going to be prioritized as well eventually, but that hasn't been announced at this point. Some quick mentions. I do want to mention a couple of things around the webinar and large meeting type scenarios, right? Virtual events. This is a licensing change, everybody. So Green Room is just this capability that you have to be able to have an area where before the event starts, you have presenters and organizers, everybody in the green room ready to maybe talk about some last minute things, check video, check audio, make sure everything is going well on that. And then I can press a button to start the broadcast. Well, that was a Teams premium capability, but starting here, actually it's already available. You can go in and see this now. And I had some customers with this that were like, why do I have this feature? I don't have Teams premium. Well, guess what? It's on. You go into meeting options, you can flip Green Room on, done. The other thing with this change is it will automatically do it for all webinars. Okay, so that's the other thing I want you to keep in mind. Another one I thought was really interesting, two of them that I thought were interesting, the ability in Microsoft Stream after a video gets uploaded to be able to add inside the video a Microsoft Form survey or quiz or whatever you want to do it inside the video. So like stop here, insert a quiz, and then they can take the quiz. Same thing with hypertext and text. You're going to also be able to do that. So that's coming up here early December into late January for your organizations to be able to get that. Some things on co-organizer for Teams, webinars and town halls, going to be able to do pretty much everything that now an organizer can do, which we've been looking for that for a while. And then the other one I thought was really interesting. If you are doing anything with loop workspaces, right? So this is think of this as kind of like the SharePoint side versus OneDrive, right? OneDrive is more personal. If I do a loop inside a Teams meeting or a Teams chat, guess what? That goes into my OneDrive. But if I want to do something that's more collaborative across the entire group, maybe like a SharePoint site type scenario, that's what the workspace is. That's going to count against your tenant SharePoint storage quota. That's important to keep that in mind, okay? And then some updated messages. For those who are looking for the emoji, GIFs, and stickers, they are going to be moving them into one picker as opposed to 3 separate icons to be able to choose. All right, that's happening. And that did change as far as when that's happening. This one too, I want to make sure you see the new experience for search with chat and channels, by the way, that got pushed back a little bit as well. So keep that in mind. And that's really, you do that Control F inside a chat or channel, and you're going to get that panel on the right-hand side to be able to do those things. And then finally, some updated admin action ones. The one that I wanted to pull out, make sure I post, by the way, is the new Teams default. If you did not catch that, on March 31st, 2024, Classic Teams will be automatically updated to that new Teams experience, right? So this is important for you guys to make sure you're ready for this change. And then the other ones that we have here, we've talked about stream retirement, and then the Teams live event retirement, as I mentioned, September 30th, 2024. It will no longer be supported and access will be discontinued. Any recordings that you have made just prior to that, guys, then you'll have access to that until December 31st, unless you download them and move them someplace else. And highly suggested, Town Hall is the replacement for your Teams live event. So keep that in mind. And I think, yeah, Kendra, the classic Teams toggle going away probably. Yes, 331. Yes, I believe that's also going to be the case. If they're getting taken away classic, basically, you're not going to get that toggle anymore. So make sure you guys, from a change management perspective, you're looking at it, understand it's still in development and it's not 100% feature parity right now. They are working towards that with that deadline in mind, okay? Wow, that was a lot. Michelle?